The Mongol Empire was built not only on conquest, but on control. An empire of fear as much as of armies. From the steppes of Mongolia to the gates of Baghdad, Genghis Khan and his successors ruled through terror elevated to law. Their punishments were not born of chaos or cruelty alone. They were deliberate instruments of order. Every execution, every display of vengeance, was a declaration that defiance would not merely fail, it would vanish. To rule a world stitched together from dozens of nations, the Mongols wielded fear as their most effective weapon. Before Genghis Khan, the tribes of the steppe lived in near constant conflict, raiding and killing, according to custom and feud. When Temujin, his birth name, united them, he understood that violence alone could not hold his new nation together. It required a system, one that made obedience instinctive and rebellion unthinkable. His answer was the Yasa, a code of law so strict and absolute that it transformed terror into governance. In the Yasa, disobedience was not a crime against a ruler, but against the order of the world itself. Punishment, therefore, had to be swift, public, and absolute. When a soldier deserted, when a scout lied, when a merchant cheated the army, death followed without hesitation. Yet Mongol justice was not chaos. It was methodical. The Yasa outlined penalties for theft, adultery, and betrayal with the same precision it gave to military formation. There was no room for mercy because mercy bred weakness. Genghis Khan believed that an empire could only endure if its laws inspired more dread than any enemy could. He once said, "An army of sheep led by a lion will defeat an army of lions led by a sheep." The Yasa ensured that every lion in his ranks feared his will more than death itself. This philosophy extended beyond his own people to conquered cities. Mongol punishment became legend. Resistance was crushed not merely to destroy, but to teach. When cities defied Mongol demands for surrender, their annihilation was total. Every man, woman, and child slain. Their ashes left as monuments to obedience. Survivors were spared only to spread the tale. The message was consistent across thousands of miles. Obey and live, resist and be erased. Yet beneath this brutality lay logic. Terror was not mindless, it was law. The Mongols believed fear could be harnessed like a weapon, sharpened into stability. In a world without printing presses or instant communication, the story of punishment traveled faster than armies. Entire kingdoms submitted without a single arrow loosed, terrified by rumors of Mongol wrath. When Genghis Khan's grandson, H-Fei Leg-Fei, approached Baghdad in 1258, its citizens knew what awaited them. The city surrendered too late. Its destruction became legend. But hundreds of others yielded instantly, their walls opening at the first sight of dust on the horizon. The Mongols turned discipline into spectacle. A general who failed was executed before his troops, his body displayed as a warning. A soldier who stole from a comrade faced death by strangulation, his crime announced aloud before the army. Even nobles were not spared. The Yasa demanded that all were equal in punishment, and Genghis himself enforced it. When one of his lieutenants kidnapped a woman against orders, the Khan commanded his death despite their friendship. His followers saw that justice was blind to rank, but never to fear. To outsiders, this system appeared monstrous. To the Mongols, it was sacred. The Yasa was not just law, it was destiny, revealed through Genghis's vision of divine order. The gods favored strength, and terror was the tool by which the strong maintained it. The Khan's punishments were designed to purify his people through discipline and to terrify his enemies into submission. He believed that a world ruled by fear was a world without chaos. The Mongol Empire's greatness was carved from this philosophy. Cities fell, borders shifted, and armies rose and died. but the law of terror endured. Even after Genghis's death, his descendants, Fege, Mfake, and Kublai, continued to rule with the same cold precision. Theirs was not a tyranny of madness, but of order through dread. The Mongols did not invent cruelty, but they perfected its purpose. Their punishments were messages written in flesh and fire, reminders that under their rule, terror was not an accident. It was structure. To live within the Mongol world was to understand that fear itself had become law, and that law, enforced with unflinching resolve, bound an empire that stretched from the Yellow Sea to the Danube. An empire sustained not merely by conquest, but by the silence of those too afraid to rebel. Among the Mongols, death was an art of obedience. Even in punishment, there was law, ritual, and reverence for custom. One of the most striking aspects of Mongol justice was their insistence, especially when dealing with nobles, royalty, or sacred enemies, that no blood be spilled. Death had to come silently, without the defilement of blood touching the earth. To outsiders, it seemed like a strange mercy. In truth, it was a grim act of sacred precision, blending brutality with belief. The Mongols did not deny cruelty, they refined it. The steppe had its own spirituality, woven through shamanic traditions in the cult of Tengri, the eternal blue sky. The Mongols believed that the spilling of noble blood polluted the ground and angered the heavens. A warrior's blood belonged to the gods. To let it soak into the soil was to offend the natural order. And so when Genghis Khan or his generals condemned high-born captives to death, the method had to be clean, bloodless, but not painless. The result was a catalog of punishments, as inventive as they were dreadful. Some victims were strangled with silk cords, a gesture reserved for kings and princes. The soft material honored their status, even as it cut off their breath. Others were wrapped in carpets or felt blankets and trampled by horses, crushed until every bone broke beneath the weight, their flesh unpierced. The Mongols considered this the proper way to execute those of rank, death beneath hoof and hide, unseen by the sky, leaving the ground unstained. Chroniclers of the era, both Persian and Chinese, recorded these executions with a mix of horror and fascination. The historian Atta Malik Juvayni described how Jalal ad-Din's generals, captured after a failed rebellion, were suffocated beneath rugs in front of their men, an execution as silent as it was final. Chinese annals recount similar scenes. Nobles rolled in carpets and stamped to death, while the watching crowd remained eerily still. In the Mongol worldview, this was not desecration but ritual. The condemned were given a death that upheld the sacred law, even as it erased them. To Mongol justice, the manner of death carried as much meaning as the act itself. Ordinary criminals might be executed with arrows, burned alive, or torn apart. But the blood of rulers and warriors was to be contained. Even Genghis Khan's enemies, men who had defied him on the battlefield, sometimes met their end in this bloodless fashion. The Khan's executioners understood that to break the cosmic law of purity would bring misfortune upon the empire. Thus, killing became ceremony, an act performed not in rage, but in obedience to the eternal order. This custom also served a political purpose. To execute nobility without spilling their blood was to assert dominance without sacrilege. It was a message. The Mongols could kill kings without offending the gods. Their justice was not barbarism but theology. In crushing a ruler beneath horses or silencing him with silk, they demonstrated mastery not just over life and death, but over spiritual law itself. No divine protector could shield their victims. Even heaven bowed before Mongol interpretation of order. At times, this restraint made the act even more horrifying. Eyewitnesses wrote of men suffocating slowly beneath rugs while the executioners chanted prayers. Some victims, still conscious, felt their ribs crack one by one as horses trampled them. Others died in silence, faces pressed against wool, air gone, dignity reduced to ritual. There was no scream to carry to the gods, only the weight of inevitability. The rule of no blood extended beyond execution. It shaped Mongol warfare too. When they took enemy leaders alive, their treatment reflected this grim etiquette. The death of the Khwarezmian Shah's kin, the annihilation of rival khans, the crushing of rebel generals, all followed the same principle. Nobility was no shield. It only changed the method. In this blending of piety and precision, the Mongols revealed the heart of their empire, an order built on discipline, faith, and terror intertwined. To the modern mind, their mercy seems paradoxical, offering a clean death through suffocation or crushing. But in their logic, it was a sacred balance between cruelty and cosmic law. When the Mongols rolled their enemies into carpets, it was not madness. It was theology made manifest. It was the belief that even death must serve the law of the eternal sky, that the spilling of blood could taint divine harmony. And so, the empire killed its kings quietly, its captives neatly, its enemies completely. Their justice was not savage because it was wild. It was savage because it was exact. In the Mongol Empire, punishment was never private. It was theater, deliberate, calculated, and always performed before witnesses. Every execution, every act of retribution, was a lesson written in blood and silence. The Mongols understood that fear was only useful when it was seen. To rule a world of many faiths, tongues, and loyalties, they transformed justice into spectacle. Cities became classrooms, their citizens unwilling students, and the punishment of one man became the obedience of thousands. The Mongols' empire stretched across lands, too vast to control by garrisons alone. Armies could not linger in every conquered province. Governors could not police every border. What held this colossal domain together was the certainty that defiance brought annihilation, and that this annihilation would be witnessed. The Mongols didn't merely punish rebels. They staged their deaths as moral performances. They understood that the human mind remembers horror longer than kindness, and that one act of public punishment could prevent 100 rebellions. When a city defied surrender, its fall was turned into ceremony. The people were gathered into the squares, surrounded by soldiers. The leaders who resisted were brought forward first: kings, nobles, clerics, anyone who had dared to stand against Mongol demand before their people's eyes. They were executed in ways designed to sear the memory. Some were strangled, others crushed, and in the case of peasants or lesser foes, beheaded or impaled. The Mongols did not execute for vengeance. They executed for instruction. Chroniclers from Persia, Rus, and China describe these scenes with haunting detail. In 1220, when the city of Urgench defied Genghis Khan's command to surrender, its destruction became legend. Tens of thousands were executed in organized batches, their corpses arranged in ranks, as if in death they still served in order. Survivors were spared not for mercy, but to spread the tale. The lesson was clear: surrender brings life, defiance brings extinction. The Mongols didn't have to issue decrees. Their punishments became their law. To conquered peoples, these spectacles were both terror and prophecy. In some cities, citizens executed their own leaders before the Mongols arrived, hoping to avert collective punishment. In others, entire garrisons surrendered the moment. Mongol envoys appeared on the horizon. The sight of a single surviving prisoner, mutilated and sent back as warning, was often enough to open the gates of the next fortress. The Mongols ruled not only through the sword, but through the imagination, through the vivid image of what disobedience meant. This was no random cruelty. It was the statecraft of fear. The Mongols were masters of psychological warfare, long before the term existed. They calculated their punishments for maximum effect, ensuring that even distant kingdoms trembled at the stories carried by refugees and merchants. Genghis Khan famously declared that the greatest happiness is to vanquish your enemies, to chase them before you, and to hear the lamentations of their women. But behind that boast lay a precise logic. Suffering was currency, and terror was diplomacy. In some conquered cities, the Mongols built towers of skulls, a practice not unique to them, but one they perfected. Each tower was a monument to memory, rising white and silent against the horizon. To travelers, it was both warning and sermon. The message was universal and unmistakable. The empire does not forget. These towers stood for decades, long after the Mongol armies had moved on, long after the dust of war had settled. They taught obedience in the absence of soldiers. Even Mongol generals were not immune to these lessons. Disobedience within the army was punished with the same merciless spectacle. A commander who retreated without orders was executed before his men. Those who deserted were crushed beneath horses in public view. The Mongols demanded discipline from conquerors as much as from the conquered. Fear kept everyone in line, from the humblest archer to the grandest Khan's kin. To the modern world, these acts seem monstrous, but to the Mongols, they were efficient, even moral. In their eyes, order was sacred. A rebellion that cost 100,000 lives today might prevent 1 million deaths tomorrow. The logic was chilling, but consistent. They believed that mercy for the few would destroy peace for the many. And so terror became governance, cruelty became law, and death became a teacher. The Mongol punishments were not random acts of violence. They were messages carved into history. Every execution was a lesson in obedience that echoed across mountains and deserts. And in that echo, Genghis Khan's empire held together, not by faith, not by culture, but by fear so complete, it became indistinguishable from respect. To understand the Mongols is to understand that their punishments were not born of chaos, but of imagination. They conquered through precision and ruled through fear. And in both, creativity was their weapon. Their cruelties were not random. They were messages carefully constructed to break the spirit as much as the body. To the Mongols, suffering was theater, and the empire's survival depended on ensuring no one ever forgot the performance. The Mongols had mastered the art of pain as persuasion. Each punishment carried meaning. Each execution was calculated to imprint obedience. To resist them was not to risk death alone. It was to invite invention. Captives, rebels, and traitors were punished in ways designed to resonate far beyond the moment of their dying. Stories of these deaths spread like wildfire, passed by traitors and survivors across continents, growing more terrible with each retelling. In this way, Mongol cruelty became immortal. The steppe warriors inherited and refined tortures from the many cultures they conquered. From the Persians and the Khwarezmians, they learned the art of flaying, peeling skin from flesh as a living warning. Chroniclers recorded that rebel governors were sometimes stripped alive, their hides nailed to city gates as symbols of betrayal. In other cases, condemned men were left in the desert with bellies slit open and grains sewn inside, their bodies consumed by birds that came to feed. For lesser crimes, mutilation took the place of death. Noses, ears, or eyes removed, the body left alive to spread the tale. Other punishments reflected their obsession with control and spectacle. Prisoners accused of treachery were crushed beneath wagons, their ribs cracking one by one under the wheels. Some were bound and placed beneath wooden boards, over which horses were driven, executions that served both to entertain the troops and reinforce discipline. To the Mongols, this was not mindless violence. It was order reinforced through terror. They believed that cruelty, properly applied, prevented chaos. Accounts from Persian historian Juvani and the chronicler Rashid al-Din describe Mongol punishments that blurred the line between ritual and torture. Enemies captured after sieges were sometimes buried alive, left to suffocate beneath the very walls they had failed to defend. Others were boiled in cauldrons or roasted in bronze containers shaped like bulls, methods inherited from ancient Asia but refined with Mongol efficiency. Even impalement, the grim punishment later perfected in Europe, found early practice among them. These horrors were not the product of random sadism. They were part of a calculated system meant to unify fear across an empire too vast for direct control. Their punishments were not reserved for enemies alone. The Yasa, Genghis Khan's code of law, applied equally to his own people. A soldier who stole from another faced execution. A scout who lied about the enemy's position was flayed alive. Adultery among married women was punished by death. Lying to one's superior could cost an entire family their lives. The cruelty of Mongol justice lay not in its inconsistency but in its precision. There was no corruption, no negotiation. Mercy was weakness, and weakness, to the Mongols, was death itself. When the Mongols captured the Khwarezmian city of Nishapur in 1221, after the death of Genghis Khan's son-in-law, they turned vengeance into ritual. Chroniclers claim the city was destroyed so completely that its ruins disappeared from the face of the earth. Men, women, and children were slaughtered in organized rows, their bodies counted to satisfy military discipline. But even amid this annihilation, the Mongols preserved a grim order. Soldiers were forbidden from killing without command, proving that their cruelty was not frenzy, it was policy. What made Mongol torture especially terrifying was its calmness. Their executioners worked without malice or joy. They obeyed. Punishment was duty, as sacred as prayer. When a general was crushed for failure, his soldiers watched in silence, learning that the same fate awaited them if they disobeyed. The absence of rage made the act colder, more divine. And yet, their cruelty was efficient. The Mongols rarely tortured without purpose. Once fear was established, they preferred submission to slaughter. Entire kingdoms surrendered untouched simply to avoid the fate they had heard whispered across deserts and steppes. In that sense, the true genius of Mongol punishment was not in its brutality, but in its reputation. They had discovered the perfect balance between horror and control, using terror sparingly, but with such unforgettable intensity that it ruled minds for generations. The Mongols' inventive cruelties remind us that civilization and barbarism often wear the same face. Their tortures were not chaos, but order enforced by suffering. They killed methodically, punished with design, and built an empire whose foundation was the memory of pain. Their victims' bones turned to dust long ago, but their cries, recorded in ink and legend, still echo with the precision of Mongol discipline. At the heart of the Mongol Empire's cruelty was not chaos, it was belief. Behind every execution, every crushing, every act of terror lay an unshakable faith in order. The Mongols did not think of their punishments as brutality. They thought of them as justice. To them, justice was not mercy nor compassion. It was balance. A crime unpunished invited disorder, and disorder was the enemy of life itself. The Mongols ruled a realm so vast that no single system could bind it but fear, and that fear was sanctified by faith. The code that governed this system was the Yasa, Genghis Khan's unwritten law. Born from the unification of the warring tribes of the steppe, it embodied the Khan's vision of divine justice. He believed himself chosen by Tengri, the eternal blue sky, to bring order to the world. His laws reflected that conviction: absolute obedience, ruthless equality, and punishment so swift and precise that none would dare question it. The Yasa forbade lying, theft, and betrayal. It punished disobedience as treason against heaven itself. In this framework, fear was not cruelty. It was duty, the sacred instrument of a cosmic design. The Mongols saw the universe as a vast hierarchy sustained by discipline. Just as herds followed their leader and warriors their Khan, so too must all humanity follow the will of the conqueror, chosen by heaven. When Genghis Khan's envoys were killed by a rival king, his response was not revenge but divine retribution. He declared, "He has defied the great order of the sky. Therefore, the sky itself shall judge him." His armies did not merely destroy their enemies. They carried out the verdict of the gods. Cities burned, rivers ran red, and from the ashes rose the Mongol belief that justice was inseparable from fear. Punishment then became sacred ritual. Executions were carried out with a strange formality. The condemned bowed to the eternal sky before dying, acknowledging the inevitability of fate. The executioner was not a butcher but a servant of order. His act was purification, restoring balance to the world by removing what threatened it. Even the most dreadful deaths, such as suffocation under carpets or crushing beneath horses, were wrapped in this aura of divine legitimacy. The victims did not die merely for their crimes. They died to maintain the harmony decreed by heaven. This belief extended beyond punishment. The Mongols saw success in battle, prosperity in trade, and even the weather as proof of divine favor. Fear in this worldview was not an emotion. It was evidence of power rightly held. Those who feared the Khan acknowledged his connection to Tengri. Those who defied him rejected the sky's order and invited annihilation. Thus, the terror of Mongol punishment was both political and spiritual, binding subjects to their rulers through awe as much as through dread. Yet, within this system of divine justice lay paradox. The Yasa demanded fairness even in ferocity. It declared that no man should kill without reason, that soldiers who stole from their comrades or civilians would die for it. Genghis Khan executed his own generals for disobedience, not in rage, but in devotion to his law. The same code that justified cruelty also enforced discipline, ensuring that the Mongol armies, vast and ruthless, remained the most organized and loyal force on earth. Their fear was not of the enemy, but of the Khan's justice. Chroniclers who witnessed the Mongols struggled to reconcile this duality. To the Persians, they were demons. To the Chinese, instruments of cosmic correction. Some saw in them the wrath of heaven sent to punish human corruption. Even in their cruelty, there was a strange kind of morality, a conviction that the world must be ruled, that chaos was sin, and that only absolute fear could preserve peace. And in a terrible way, they were right. Under Mongol rule, trade flourished. Caravans crossed from the Mediterranean to the Pacific in safety, and bandits disappeared. Their justice, brutal and unyielding, created stability unmatched in their time. It was built on corpses, but it worked. The empire endured not through love, but through belief that terror was sacred and that obedience was divine. The legacy of this philosophy endures in history's memory. The Mongols are remembered not only for the cities they destroyed, but for the law they forged out of destruction. A law that saw cruelty as order and fear as faith. They remind us how easily justice can become tyranny when it is divorced from mercy, how belief can sanctify even the most unspeakable acts. To the Mongols, justice, fear, and faith were one and the same. Their empire rose beneath the eternal blue sky and burned its law into the bones of nations. And though their world has long vanished, the echo of their creed remains, a whisper that power, once touched by divinity, justifies all things.